In November 1923, a bank clerk in Berlin went to collect his weekly wages. He was handed 200 billion marks. By the time he walked home, he could barely buy a loaf of bread. He had a savings account, government bonds, a pension he'd been paying into for 20 years. He had done everything right. Everything his bank, his government, and his father had told him to do. By the end of that year, all of it was gone. Not lost in a bad investment, not stolen, just worth nothing. The number in his account stayed the same. The number just stopped meaning anything. 40 miles outside the city, a grain farmer was having the best year of his life. People were showing up at his door, offering family heirlooms, gold watches, fur coats, just to get their hands on a bag of flour. Same country, same crisis, same month. One man lost everything he'd spent his life building. The other had never been wealthier. The difference wasn't intelligence. It wasn't luck. It wasn't who they knew. It was what they held. That exact same pattern has shown up in every major financial crisis in the last 4,000 years. Every hyperinflation, every currency collapse, every time a government's money stopped working. The same 6 things protected people, every time. This video is about those 6 things, what they are, why they work, and whether what you're currently holding has ever made it through one of these events intact. This wasn't just Germany. Weimar Germany, 1923. Revolutionary France, 1796. Argentina, 2001. The week the banks locked their doors and froze every account overnight. Zimbabwe, 2008. Hungary, 1946. The most extreme hyperinflation ever recorded, where prices doubled every 15 hours. The Soviet collapse, 1991. Venezuela, where the currency lost 99% of its value inside a decade. In ancient Rome, and its silver coins were quietly hollowed out over a century. 8 collapses, 4 continents, 4,000 years. In every single one, the people who came through were holding the same 6 things, while the people who were destroyed were holding what their banks told them was safe. Here are the 6. Zimbabwe, 2008. The government had been printing money for years to cover its debts. By 2008, the currency had collapsed so completely that the government was printing $100 trillion notes. People carried cash to the shops in wheelbarrows, and sometimes arrived to find the price had changed while they were standing in line. In the cities, people with savings accounts and pension funds had nothing. The numbers in their accounts were meaningless. But outside Harare, on the farms, completely different story. A farmer with land, livestock, and crops had something no amount of printing money could destroy. People needed to eat. They always need to eat. A bag of grain feeds a family whether the dollar is worth something or worth nothing. So farmers became the new wealthy, not because their land went up in value on a spreadsheet, but because it produced things people desperately needed and couldn't get anywhere else. Weimar Germany showed the same thing. A pig farmer in Bavaria could trade a single hog for a grand piano, because the piano owner was starving and the farmer had food. That's documented history. You can devalue a currency overnight. You cannot devalue a field of wheat. The land isn't the asset. What the land produces is the asset. What it produces, food, fuel, raw materials, has been valuable for every single year of human history. France, 1789. The revolutionary government needed money to fund its wars, so it did what governments always do when they need money they don't have. It printed some. The new currency was called the assignat, backed by church land the government had seized. Trusted at first, accepted everywhere. Then they printed more, and more, and more. Within 7 years, the assignat had lost 99% of its value. The government tried replacing it with a brand new currency. That one collapsed within months. The people who had exchanged their paper money into gold early came out the other side with everything intact. When both paper currencies were worthless, their gold wasn't. They used it to buy land, to buy food, to exchange for whatever came next. The people who waited to see if it would really get that bad lost everything that wasn't paper. And here's the thing that most people miss. Central banks, the actual institutions that print paper money, are currently holding more gold than at any point in the last 30 years. The German central bank, China's central bank, India's, all of them quietly buying gold at the same time. These aren't conspiracy theorists. These are the people who run the monetary system, and they're behaving like people who don't entirely trust it. Gold doesn't make you rich in good times. It makes you solvent when everyone else is broke. That's a completely different job, and it's a job gold has never once failed to do in 4,000 years. Brazil, 1988. Inflation that year ran at over 1,000%. Think about what that means for business. A product that costs $1 to make in January costs $11 to make by December. If you agree to price months in advance, you're selling at a fraction of what it costs you to produce. You go under. Most businesses did. But walk into a supermarket in Sao Paulo in 1988 and you'd see something strange. The price tags were being changed. Not weekly, not daily, multiple times a day. Because supermarkets sell food, and they could charge whatever they needed to charge right now, this hour, to keep up with what the currency was doing. Their customers had no choice but to keep buying. So they held their value while everything around them was destroyed. Companies selling luxury goods? Gone. Long-term contracts? Destroyed. Fixed price agreements? Worthless. In a currency crisis, pricing power is everything. The business that can tell its customers the price changed this morning and knows they have no choice but to pay it holds its value. Everything else gets left behind. Buenos Aires, December 2001. Argentina's banking system was about to freeze. Accounts would be locked, withdrawals blocked, and in the weeks before it happened, something was going on that most ordinary Argentines didn't know about. Wealthy families were quietly moving money out, into US dollar accounts in Uruguay, into property in Miami, into Swiss francs, into anything that wasn't the Argentine peso. When the freeze hit, those families were completely untouched. Their money was in a different currency. The collapse couldn't reach it. Meanwhile, a school teacher who had saved for 30 years in peso accounts, done everything responsibly, done everything she was told, lost most of it within weeks. Same city, same crisis, same week, opposite outcomes. If your money is in the currency that's collapsing, your money is collapsing. If it's in a different currency, it isn't. That's it. That's the whole thing. This is why, in every country that goes through a crisis, capital controls. Laws that stop you from moving money abroad are almost always the government's first emergency move, because the people who understand what's happening are already trying to leave. The exit exists in every crisis. It closes quickly, and almost always, the people who lose everything aren't the ones who didn't care. They're the ones who waited to see if it would really get that bad. Moscow, 1992. The Soviet Union had just collapsed. The ruble was in freefall. Savings accounts the people had spent decades building were evaporating in real time. But during the Soviet privatization, something unusual had happened. The government had handed millions of ordinary Russians ownership of the apartments they were living in, previously state property, essentially for free. Most people saw it as a bureaucratic formality, a piece of paper from a home they were already in. Within 2 years, it was the most valuable thing most of those families would ever own. While everything denominated in rubles evaporated. The apartment was still there. It had walls, it had a roof. You could rent it for US dollars, which had become what people were actually using in Moscow. You couldn't print more apartments. You couldn't inflate away the concrete and steel. A building survives because it's a physical thing people need. And that need doesn't disappear when a government changes what its money is worth. One warning, and it matters. Real estate bought with heavy debt in the collapsing currency is a completely different story. The asset holds. The debt destroys you. A building survives because it's real. Bricks, concrete, steel, a roof over someone's head. You can change the name of the currency. You cannot change the fact that people need somewhere to live. Budapest, 1946. Hungary's hyperinflation was the worst recorded in human history. Prices were doubling every 15 hours. The government was printing notes with so many zeros that they'd stopped making practical sense. A government worker on a fixed salary was being wiped out in real time. Didn't matter how hard he worked or how many years he'd put in. His salary was paid in a currency losing half its value every 15 hours. He couldn't keep up. A plumber who renegotiated his price before every single job? Different story entirely. He ate. Every day. Because pipes break regardless of what the currency is doing. The NBER's labor research from Argentina's 2001 collapse tells a similar story. In the months after the banks froze, one category of worker appeared again and again in the records: automotive mechanics. There are accounts of garage owners in Buenos Aires who stopped accepting pesos in late 2001 entirely. Instead, they negotiated each job individually, in US dollars if the customer had them, in food if they didn't, and whatever held real value that week. The garages stayed open. Their families ate. While the formal economy collapsed around them, their skill, the specific, practical, irreplaceable ability to keep a car running, meant they never lost the ability to negotiate their own terms. This is the sixth asset, and it's the strangest one on this list, because you can't put it in a vault or write it in a balance sheet. When a currency collapses, the economy doesn't stop. It reorganizes around direct exchange, and in that world, the person who can fix your car, treat your illness, or keep the lights on has more real purchasing power than someone sitting on a pile of government bonds worth less than the paper they're printed on. Skills are the only asset on this list that cost nothing to acquire, can never be confiscated, can never be frozen, and can never be inflated away. And yet, they're the one almost nobody thinks about when it comes to protecting their financial future. So here's what 4,000 years of financial history actually shows. Every time a currency has collapsed, from ancient Rome to Zimbabwe, the same six things protected the people who held them. Productive land, gold, businesses with pricing power, wealth held in a stable foreign currency, real estate owned outright, and essential skills. And every time, the things that were destroyed were the ones labeled safe: savings accounts, government bonds, pension funds, fixed income. The responsible assets, the ones that work perfectly, right up until the system they depend on stops working. I want to be straight with you about something, because I know how this sounds. This isn't a prediction that everything is about to collapse. Nobody knows when the next crisis comes or what triggers it, but the US dollar has lost 99% of its purchasing power since 1913. Not from a crash, from a slow, quiet erosion. The same direction, at a slower speed, that precedes every major crisis in the historical record. The bank clerk in Berlin had done everything right. He just held the wrong things. The question isn't whether you're worried about a collapse. The question is whether what you're holding right now, today, in your accounts, your portfolio, your pension, is the kind of thing that has historically made it through. When the next crisis comes, it won't matter what you knew. It will only matter what you held. Subscribe. Every week on this channel, we go through the actual historical record. What happened, what survived, and what got left behind. Next video, the assets that go to zero in a real collapse, including two that almost every financial advisor will tell you are the safest things you can own. History has the answers. I'll show you where to look.